Spy Cops Info Podcast, Episode 19.
Special 4-part mini-series about informers, infiltrators and grassers. One of the reasons why we split these into parts is that the subject matter is even more depressing than usual, because rather than talking about the police trying to destroy our movements, it's actually people, civilians, doing so. First part on grassers.
Welcome to Spy Cops Info Podcast. I'm Tom Fowler and I'm joined with
Donal O'Driscoll from the Undercover Research Group.
Cheers for joining us, man. Okay, so today we're talking about informers.
Yes.
Obviously, we're the people who are obsessed with undercover cops. We can get a bit too kind of focused on that, but in reality, there are loads of different bad actors. The informers are probably way more significant in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and there's a lot more of them. Whereas the spy cops tend to get all the attention, you got that sort of funny James Bond ethos that some people like to throw on them. They got the equipment, they got the state support, they feed into all that conspiracy theory. But the actual bread and butter of the majority of intelligence gathering is people talking to cops on the quiet.
You've split it up into three sort of groups. Like, what's the difference, man?
So the three groups are informers, infiltrators, and grasses, and it's more the way they approach it. So ultimately, the effect is all the same. It's people breaching your security, telling the state or even corporations what you're up to either scup your actions or basically just give them intelligence that they can catch you out or trip you up. But where they come from, what motivates them, and how they work are quite distinct things. And if you're trying to discover where you're being tripped up like that, whether it is you've got a spy cop or whether it's another form of information leak, understanding the different way that they operate and come to the process is quite important. The simplest one is basically your grass. The person who's been arrested, and the pressure's put on them in the interview thing, and they start talking.
I think we've all known people, any of us who are involved in activism have known people who've ended up doing that. They don't realise they're being a grass almost. They're just in a pressure situation, right? And I think it's something which you really need to discuss with each other before doing direct action together. That is basically grassing, right? If you end up working with people who come in from a very liberal background, they will talk to the police. They will they have some sort of political position where talking to the police is like, you're a grass as well.
I think there's quite a lot to unpack around it. We quite often have there's just a snitch, just a rat, and so on, and without recognizing there's a lot of process that goes on into somebody becoming turned. In this case, if we're focusing just on grasses for the moment. If we don't acknowledge those pressures or the wider picture, we're always going to be at a risk. And if I can just take a slightly different perspective, somebody who comes from Northern Ireland, and also the first movement I was active in was animal rights, it was always made very clear, if you were arrested, you didn't talk. There was none of this, I'm going to say this or I'm going to present my argument. It was, the police are asking you questions for one reason and one reason only. If it's not to screw you over, it's to screw your mates over. There is absolutely no benefit in talking except to get yourself out of a tricky situation, or you have some misguided thing that your truth is more powerful than the state's desire to get a conviction. And that's the simple basis of what it comes down to. And I totally agree with I've come up quite a lot against if I just tell my side, I'm just thinking, it's just like, you're misreading the situation. They're not your friends. If they were our friends, they wouldn't be arresting us in the first place.
It's a political misunderstanding. It comes from this idea of speaking truth to power. Is that some people think that by simply using the right formation of words, as if society is a debating chamber. It's not. It's a power struggle. And it's as simple as that. It's not a complicated message. It bears a lot of repeating, sadly. Just do not speak to the cops. People do break. The pressure, the intimidation, kind of the interview room does get to some people, right? Especially if they've been kept for a while.
Yeah, and the whole point about the custody suite, I've been in enough times to realize just that it's there to intimidate. There's a reason when you're arrested, you're not interviewed straight away. You were left to stew for several hours. The entire thing is trying to break you down. So going into a situation like that, feeling empowered, feeling right. I am going to be here for another 9 hours. I might be here for 24 hours. That's because they want to break me. And there's also where the politics of solidarity is so powerful going in. I won't break. I won't give up my friends because we show solidarity with each other. That's a core thing. And so it's getting people past the state's nice, really, or the state just wants to solve crime, to I need to show solidarity with my friends, and we need to, look after each other. That's the core thing. You need to be going into that particular situation. And they're very adept at trying to find those weak points. They'll do hit and miss, and we'll all have stories about where they said something really stupid or totally misread a thing. But it also gives an insight into the fact, these small pressures, we'll get you a reduced sentence, we won't have your child taken away, we'll get social services. They're very adept at finding those little weaknesses. And we used to have a phrase of don't gossip about each other, because
that is such an important thing. yeah.
But you're basically giving anybody who's listening in tools in which to put pressure on. Like, spy cops, big issue, really invasive. No less invasive is the constant monitoring of all our communications and identifying things that they can go, well, actually, this person's fallen out with that person. It's something nasty. We can actually use that, and they will use that. They're always looking for those routes in to either play your ego, to play on your finances, to play on your just emotional stress.
Yeah.
And so a tangent to that, and this is a lesson I learned the hard way, is when we're doing stuff with people, we also have to be very aware that when things do go wrong and we do get arrested, we may be putting people in a situation where they're not going to stand up to that sort of pressure, or they don't have the capacity to actually maintain resistance in the face of sustained police intimidation.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've been arrested with people in the past who I thought wouldn't do that. They've been very honest when they've come out, and they've said that, they answered questions. Yeah, it is going to happen. It is really difficult, because people can say beforehand, we don't speak to the cops, but in that situation, like you say, they just don't have the capacity to deal with it.
Even the people who felt, they said, well, I didn't say anything to them.
Right, that's always the line. It's always the line, isn't it?
And I've seen that evidence. Yeah. Somebody came back and said, I didn't say anything. I said, well, you said I was in the blue van. You immediately put me in the place. It's like, but that doesn't matter to you. It's like, now add in this line and that line. Yeah. And it's like, you don't think you said anything seriously, but you've effectively done a statement against me.
I think that's a lot easily remedied if people have studied how how convictions happen, right? If you've actually been to court and you've seen how the processes go and the arguments are used and the evidence that's used, it becomes pretty obvious that even the smallest detail matters and will be pored over.
Police want statements. You look at any police TV show, it's all about the interview. It's there in front of you, and police will say this. It's like, if they can get the interview, they've got the evidence. Everything else, unless it's particularly hardcore DNA or forensic stuff, the majority of convictions are because people open their mouths. Yeah. We
can't stress enough, no comment. It was the name of probably the most popular free pamphlet we've ever given out. I'll put a link in the description to no comment. It does just come down to those two words, really. It's not complicated. A lot of people who start off the road of grassing don't actually want to be a grass. They don't mean to be a grass. But it happens.
And that's a very important point. Once you're in the cycle, once they've got their hooks in you, they don't let go. They do not want to let go. And they will use the fact that they have the hooks in you to keep you giving to them.
I mean, I think it's definitely something which I experienced in the past in our group, where it would happen and people would drop out of the group. Partially, maybe because of the reaction they got after they'd done that, but also because maybe the police had put pressure on them. And the only way they could not give information about people is not be involved, right? That's... Yeah.
So the other thing besides talking to people in advance before you put them in any sort of situation is to have a culture where if people are approached, they feel safe coming straight to the group. So, and that's whether they've been approached in the police station or outside it. it used to be quite bad. It's like somebody would be approached and we go, oh, they've been approached, they must be grass. It's like, you've just done the police's work for them, ostracizing them. What you want is them to feel stronger with you and your group than with the police. It's another situation where there's struggle, where it's a battle for minds. If we're losing our people because we're not supporting them in the face of police pressure, we're only weakening ourselves.
Don't say anything when you're in an interview situation. If you're approached by police, say everything. Tell everybody what the cops just said to you. You know what I mean? Like, be like kind of, oh, this officer came to me at this time. They put, I mean, sometimes it's like there's a protest coming up. You might get a note through the door. The police are not doing. They put a note through your door. Like, take a photo of that thing, put it on Twitter. Tell everybody. Like, be like, look, the police are like trying to kind of put pressure on me about this protest I'm organising or involved with or whatever. Be. Like, I would advise any police pressure you get, any sort of any element of repression you receive from the police, be as public as possible about it, right?
Public is your best defence. Yeah. This whole thing is done on everything being kept secret. Like, one of the first things a copper will say when they're approaching you is like, are you living with anybody? It's like, are you, you can't say this to anybody, or they'll really try to get you into the headspace that this must be kept secret. The worst things that happen to them is to shine a big bloody torch on it. And also you learn a lot more. It's like
groomers.
Yes.
Right, it's like literally like it's our little secret. I mean,
it is grooming. There is no difference to it. It's about finding weakness and preying on it in order to get something. It is grooming. As you say, the definition is exactly the same. Yeah. They are it's a predator-prey situation. Yeah. And you've got to be ready to run faster and harder. But doing it in public, it's like they want everything to happen at night. They want it to happen in secret, and they want to be able to control the narrative. If you take the narrative out of their hands, they have to back off. Not just because it shines the spotlight on you so you're visible and safe. It's because it shines the spotlight on the way they work.
Right, exactly.
So one of the most interesting examples of this that I thought was the Cambridge people. A bunch of environmentalists in Cambridge were targeted and approached to be grasses. Yes, yeah. And they recorded it and went public. And the biggest effect of that, in my mind, when I went back, was how it made the police really shy away, because they did not want to be seen to be out there turning environmentalists into grasses.
The public relations on these things, it's really bad for the cops, right? They really don't want that look. And it's I think for a lot of us as activists, we kind of like, because we've got this thing of like, oh, they're bound to be doing these things. They're bound to be doing these things. It's something we've come back to again and again on the spy cops issue, is like that we don't actually know. We haven't got evidence a lot of the time. So when we do get evidence, share it from the rooftops. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is that go public with stuff, because this idea that like, oh, well, everybody knows they're all, the police asked me if I wanted to be informed. Of course they did, sort of thing. No, like, be public about it. It makes a huge difference. I think it also makes, obviously I'm not an outraged liberal, but like, you will outrage the liberals when they hear about it, and that does have political value.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. I think we've probably got a lot more grasses than people who think they're grasses.
Again, the subdivisions. There are those who have been actively approached by the police and are being ensnared in that. And I just wanted to go back to a point. When I was asked to be a grass, at one point, I was facing some violent disorder charges, and they said, oh, well, we'll send a letter to the judge and stuff. But the weird thing about what they did then was they tried to get me to go down a side street. I thought, did you ask me this? This is a bit weird, until I realised there was a camera on it. And even just handing over their card and me taking it, there's a picture of me taking their card. Immediate smear blackmail material. So if you are approached in the street or anything like that, key tip, stay as public as possible. Don't go and sit in a cafe with them or anything like that. Just I'm out in the street, and if you have to, start shouting, start making noise. Anything that causes embarrassment and draws attention to the situation. Yeah. What you do not do is go off for a private, a more private meeting. Yeah. Where they control the situation.
The other way I think that a lot of people become grasses is that their day-to-day life involves having some level of communication with the police. You're a lot of people who work in like youth work or harm reduction, drug workers and so forth, social work, all those kind of areas where you have some sort of interaction with the police already. And there's a danger those people just carry it over when they if they get involved in activism. And I think it's something which I've experienced that I've been involved with, like, you know, particularly in wider coalitions with much more liberal people, maybe working on something that they instinctively they just don't buy your anti-police rhetoric. It doesn't matter whether it comes from an undercover police officer or the fact that you've got like somebody in your group who's got some semi-professional relationship with cops because they work and they just talk about this stuff and you to them in that setting, right?
One of the things we've learned from the Spy Cops inquiry is all intelligence is intelligence.
Right,
they
exactly.
hoover up everything and anything. We still don't have a full picture of what it's put to, but they're clearly interested in it.
Yeah.
All those, you know, especially those personal bits, who's active, who's pushing what. They, you know, they see the left as a threat in all its forms, and they want recording it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So there's the informal grass,
right?
The uninformed grass,
right?
So there's the uninformed grass, the person who's sitting in a pub talking to friends, talking about what else they're up to, not realizing that one of those people is simply passing that information on. You know, and there have been a few instances that where people haven't been careful enough, have been boasting about stuff. And what it does is it gives the police an insight into whose the weak points are, you know, who to actually start looking at. So, you know, if something goes down, there's an action, nobody quite knows, everybody got away. The first thing the police ask is, where do we need to be looking? Who do we need to be looking at? And if there's a bit of intelligence, I heard my mate down the pub talking about his group, which was involved in that. And I said, oh, right, it's that group over there. That's where we need to go. It's like, I'm like, how did they find out? It's a, you know, you didn't grasp, but you effectively grasped.
Yeah. And it only takes one person, because of the way they've built up these ideas of the networks, you know, well, if it's that guy, then it'll be those other people who know that. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that's why there's so much detail. That's why they take so much detail, because like it means that one bit of information changes it for all this other bit of information.
Network analysis, which is the formal term for it all, is very complex, very, very intricate, interesting subject around this, where you only need a few bits of data point to really unpick the full thing. And even just, there's a lot of really interesting studies out there where you can fill information in by just filling enough information around it. Once somebody's become a grass, then there's several processes, and again it depends a bit on how they've been recruited. If it's somebody who's been recruited through a police station, you know, facing some sort of sentence and a pressure's been put on, they've started talking, then they do try to keep meetings going, they try to set regular things, and try to keep it small at start, you know, just asking simple questions that sound innocuous, but then start asking for bigger and bigger things.
Yeah.
You know, it's about getting you used to answering questions. And even if, like, some people go, I'll just go for a coffee to hear what they have to say. They're asking you questions, they're reading your reaction to things. So they'll be putting stuff in. It's like, oh, you know, such and such, when we know is the leader of the group. You know, oh yeah, they know the leader of the group. And you've just confirmed that person is the leader of the group. So there's lots of things like that. So even if you don't feel you're giving anything away by saying verbally, you are giving away in body language, but they want to keep you hooked, they want to keep you coming in, and they will bring you in gradually until you can't really escape. And but once they have you in that situation, they will start, and we have seen this happening, they will start asking for more proactive stuff. So I'll give an example of somebody who's now dead, so I will call Dave.
If they're dead, we can probably give their real name.
No, I'll just stick with Dave for now.
Okay.
He was an old man.
Right.
He was quite lonely, and they preyed on that, and they would go to the pub with him and have a pint. He admitted this on the phone to me because I challenged him after a while.
Right.
I said, I just go to the pub once a week, they buy me a few pints and I have a chat. And he didn't see that he was doing anything particularly wrong, except that he was telling them everything just in the course of a conversation. But the curious thing about Dave was during the Heathrow climate camp, where we're in the middle of essentially a major siege. The police are about to raid. And I suddenly get a phone call going, we need to let the ambulance in. I was like, why are we letting the ambulance in? Who's going to let the ambulance in the middle of a police siege? I was like, oh, Dave wants to leave. He's had a medical condition. And it's just like, so here's somebody who we long suspected was a grass, suddenly wanting
Right.
to breach our defences, and that was a step up to not just talking indirectly about what we were doing, but to actively trying to sabotage the defences of the climate camp.
Right, yeah. In a really like, yeah, I mean, you can also almost see the police thinking on that. It's just such an easy one to like, just to flip up. Just that escalation at the right time is perfect for them, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know?
and I did challenge him on the time, but I did after climate camp was over. I rang him and said,
Right.
"Like Dave, you're a police grass. We know it. What were you doing?" And he admitted on the phone that he was
Right.
had been talking to them. Now in his mind, he didn't see that he was particularly a grass.
Right. Yeah.
But from the rest of us going, well, you nearly destroyed our defences through your actions.
Yeah.
It was a bit more than that.
It was somebody who came along to some meetings, Gwent anarchist meetings, for a short while, who later, when the Marco thing came out, confessed that he had been a informer, as he put it, or a grass. I mean, he was someone who got involved in the group. He claims, intentionally, as an activist, but he wasn't really very active. He just sort of came along to things a bit. He said he was recruited in Borstal, he was quite an advanced age. Had been an informer in the past about low-level crime, and then when the police saw that he was going to anarchist meetings, approached him and said, you need to start giving us information about that. Otherwise, we're going to just start busting you every 5 minutes for carrying heroin. The fact that being an addict, there's the ability of not getting busted every time you go somewhere public is a huge asset. And aside from every small amount of money that he was getting for it, it wasn't that which. And I mean, he said he did it badly. He did badly on purpose. He was always late, which was true. He was always late. He used to fall asleep in meetings and stuff. Just this sort of I think it's people like that, vulnerable people who the police can lean on quite easily. And I think heroin addiction is one of those things which fits.
Yeah. Heroin addiction is the one that comes up in Green Scare. The Americans, there's a book called Green Scare itself. Where they turn somebody using their addiction and basically take down a whole bunch of animal rights and art liberation cells, get people talking about what they did. And a lot of people went to prison based on what was initially just one person being caught out on their addiction and the police being willing to put the pressure on.
No, I remember that there's a film, isn't there?
Yeah.
We'll put that in the description as well. It's worth checking out, and really shows how just one individual's heroin addiction was leaned on.
Yeah. Personally, I know it's harsh. When I was doing actions and when I was video, I wouldn't go out with people who had addictions because I was very involved in animal rights. We knew the state pressure was on. It was for my safety, but it was also for their safety. It just wouldn't have been fair. Even though they wanted to come out and do stuff, it just simply wouldn't have been fair. But this is where the culture of having openness and support, and if people are approached, that they feel they can come straight to you and not feel isolated, straight to the group and talk about it in an open and honest way.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's about sometimes being secret is an asset. Sometimes being really public is an asset. And, when you're talking to the cops, it's secrecy. When you're talking to each other, it's being public, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's key. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they are the masters of secrecy. They built and created the secret state. So don't play that world. I know some people who have tried to play that world, where they have tried to feed false information and stuff. And generally advice is don't.
Yeah,
it's
not
too hard. It's too stressful.
Yeah.
You have to be a pretty skilled player to pull that off, and the chances are you won't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think it can be quite depressing, can't it? When we talk about grasses, because these aren't people who've gone out of their way to kind of fuck things over. They're people who have been pressured, used, manipulated into that situation. We always come back to this line, they come at us because we're strong. They come at us for a reason. That they're doing these things for a reason. So, you wouldn't be having these problems if there wasn't something they were scared of. Yeah.
And the reason they use grasses and like them is because it makes their life easier. Yeah. It takes quite a lot of resources to, bug all the phones, bug all the houses and listen to them and follow you around. Whereas if somebody can just say, 6 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, be here. Yeah. It makes life easier. So they will always go for that. But as you say, it's because you are doing something effective.
Yeah, 100%.
That was the end of part 1. In the meantime, if you want to help support this podcast, please go to spycops.info and also subscribe and review from wherever you get your podcasts from.